And one reason we think it's a good idea is that everyone thought that's what the law meant for the last 20 or 30 years.
Question number 2, Jacinda Ardern.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister and asks, does he stand by his statement, quote, "Our approach to housing is succeeding," end quote, given that just 1 in 5 New Zealanders under 40 own their own home?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr Speaker, yes, although I'd note that the members' figures include 16, 17, 18 and 19-year-olds where home ownership rates are likely to be pretty low. But the government's approach is succeeding by increasing the construction of houses and helping first home buyers. Our help for first home buyers includes giving them access to their KiwiSaver savings, Home Start grants, which have helped 27,000 first home buyers in the first 2 years. These 27,000 first home buyers have been able to access around $1 billion from their KiwiSaver accounts, and there's sufficient funding available for Home Start to assist 90,000 first home buyers over the next 3 years.
Supplementary.
Order. Supplementary question, Jacinda Ardern.
If he is succeeding, why has the home ownership rate fallen every quarter under his government for 9 years, according to Statistics New Zealand?
9 long years.
Order. The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Well, Mr Speaker, there is a phenomenon around the developed world, actually, where, well, home ownership rates have fallen slowly across the developed world over the last 25 years. Our task is to ensure...
Order. I apologise for interrupting the Prime Minister. A reasonable question has been asked by the Leader of the Opposition. I want to hear the answer, even if some of the Leader of the Opposition's colleagues do not. Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr Speaker, as I said in answer to the first question, we have provided Home Start grants to 27,000 first home buyers, and we have enough funding available to assist about another 60,000 first home buyers. The most important thing we're doing is getting more houses on the ground faster, so that in the long run people will be able to more readily afford to buy their own home.
Supplementary.
Order. Supplementary question, Jacinda Ardern.
Taking the media, Jerry.
Is it harder for a young person to buy a house today than it was a generation ago?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Well, Mr Speaker, we can argue probably both sides of that. Well, a generation ago, in 2007, when that party left power, interest rates were twice what they are today. A 10% first mortgage rates. In fact, and back in the early 80s, interest rates were 20%. 20% first mortgage rates. So it's always been difficult for first home buyers. At the moment, the challenge is not so much servicing the debt, it's getting a deposit, and that is why we have the Home Start scheme, and up to 90,000 New Zealanders will be able to take advantage of that.
Supplementary question, David Seymour.
How has this government's approach to the housing market been affected by the policy settings it inherited?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Well, Mr Speaker, the main change that has been made is actually in the planning laws, because the policy settings we inherited were councils and legislation which was designed to stop our cities growing. That has now changed. All our councils are trying to accommodate growth, and that is why we have record levels of housing construction, and we expect that to continue for several years.
Supplementary question, Jacinda Ardern.
How can it be easier for this generation of first home buyers when an Auckland home buyer now, on average, needs to save a $200,000 deposit to buy a home?
Right. Yeah.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr Speaker, I didn't say it was easier. I said it's always been difficult. And that is why Well, it always has been. Because when interest rates were 18% and when interest rates were 10% under the Labor government, it was hard to service that size of debt. In fact, a lot of households simply couldn't afford to borrow the amount of money they do if they were on Labor's interest rates. That is why we have Home Start in place to assist them with getting the deposit and also the Welcome Home Loan Guarantee.
Order. Supplementary question, Jacinda Ardern.
Given he himself has said that it is a major problem that only 5% of new houses are affordable starter houses, why after 9 years in government is there still this huge shortage of homes to get young people on the property ladder?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Well, Mr Speaker, the supply of homes coming onto the market now is more than ever. That is likely to continue. Well, in the next 3 years, New Zealand will build Dunedin, which is our 4th or 5th largest city. In the next 3 years, New Zealand will build Dunedin, and that is in response to a strong economy, strong population growth, Kiwis staying home, and of course it's a bit of a challenge, but we're up to dealing with these challenges of success, whereas our opponents just want to shut the country down to make it easier for them.
Supplementary question, Marama Fox.
Can the Prime Minister explain whether it is easier or harder for Maori to get a home mortgage since Labor dismantled Māori affairs and mainstreamed housing into Housing New Zealand's hands?
Order. Order. No. Order. There is no order. There is no Prime Minister responsibility for another party's policies in the past. Supplementary question, Jacinda Ardern.
If his government is indeed building more houses than ever, why is there a shortfall of at least 40,000 homes, particularly in Auckland, that is growing by the day?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Well, Mr Speaker, in the first place, we don't accept those estimates about shortfalls. Secondly, the Auckland Council.
Order.
Well,
order. I gave a warning earlier saying that questions once asked, if they're legitimate, I've got to hear the answer. Now, unless I can get some cooperation from some members to my left, I will be asking somebody to leave the chamber. Not something I'm keen to do, but the level of interjection and the excitement amongst some of my members to the left is just unacceptable. It doesn't help the decorum of this House. Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr Speaker, there's no doubt that it took Auckland Council a while to understand how successful the New Zealand economy has been and the way that it's keeping, in the last 5 years, 150,000 Kiwis at home who were predicted to leave. But when they passed the Auckland Unitary Plan just 18 months or 2 years ago, they did then signal they wanted Auckland to grow, and that is exactly what's happening. And if we can sustain the current rate of house building there for a number of years, you will see it more possible for young New Zealanders to own their own home.
Supplementary question, Jacinda Ardern.
Can we agree that the government has a role to play in helping the next generation onto the housing ladder, and that requires a government willing to build affordable starter homes for first home buyers and a government willing to lock out speculators as a Labor government would do?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Well, Mr Speaker, it's not just a matter of agreement. Actually, that's what's happening. The government has announced its own building plan on its own land in Auckland, 35,000 houses over the next 10 years. It's put $1 billion of infrastructure funding on the table, which are going to bring forward 60,000 houses across our fast-growing cities. And as I said, we have the funding in place to assist 60,000 more young New Zealanders into their first home.
Order. Question number 3, Alistair Scott.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister of Finance.